birthright citizenship on birth on U.S. soil by executive order. No way, says Judge Coffenor. Judge Coffenor in Seattle was the first judge to issue a temporary restraining order. And now he's joined the Maryland federal judge from yesterday, who issued a nationwide injunction as well. We got overlapping nationwide injunctions, one in Seattle, one in Maryland on the very same issue, which denies Donald Trump's ability to rip away citizenship from those born on U.S. soil by way of an executive order. No way, says Judge Coffin. Or in fact, he goes one step further. Let me read to you from the order, and then I'll read to you from his words right here on Legal AF. Thank you for joining this breaking news story. Here's the conclusion of the order itself by Judge Coffenor. Listen to these words, and it'll make your eyes water. Citizenship by birth is an unequivocal constitutional right. It is one of the most precious principles that makes the United States the great nation that it is. The president cannot change, limit, or qualify this constitutional right via an executive order. The court grants the plaintiff's motion for a nationwide preliminary injunction and enjoins enforcement or implementation of the order on a nationwide basis. Signed the 6th day of February, John C. Coffenor, United States District Judge. Now, he went further. He's a Reagan appointee. He's been on the bench for a long, long time. He went further, and here's what he said in particular. And this is where some of the headlines are coming from. After a 20-minute hearing, he originally said, when he did the temporary restraining order 2 weeks ago, that there are moments in the world's history when people will look back and ask, where were the lawyers? Where were the judges? In these moments, the rule of law becomes especially vulnerable. I refuse to let that beacon go dark today. Here in particular, the judge said it has become more apparent when he issued this order. He said it has become more apparent that to our president, meaning Trump, the rule of law is but an impediment to his policy goals. The Constitution is not something with which the government may play policy games. The preliminary injunction is granted on a nationwide basis. Now, what does it mean? It means that the Trump administration, so soon after just, 15 days or so, or 17 days into his administration, is already 0 for 8 in front of federal judges in Maryland, in Seattle, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, in the District of Columbia. Every federal judge to hear the Department of Justice for Trump open its mouth has looked askance and jaundiced at their arguments, found them all intellectually bereft, and found the temporary restraining orders were appropriate. If you're doing the math at home, I'm going to put up my own Popak board. If you're doing the math at home on the temporary restraining orders so far, birthright citizenship, to stop those executive orders, we had 2 temporary restraining orders. The very first one issued by Judge Coffenor, who just converted his into a preliminary injunction. We have 2 separate temporary restraining orders, soon to be preliminary injunctions, issued against the attempt to freeze federal funding to states and not-for-profits. That's in Rhode Island and the D.C. We have a temporary restraining order against Musk rummaging around the Treasury Department, servers and computers to get our private financial and personal health data. That's from D.C. We have another D.C. temporary restraining order to stop transgender women from being housed with men in the prison population. And then we've got our 6th temporary restraining order related to Musk, in this case, with him doing federal firings and buyouts. And we've got 2 now preliminary injunctions by way of Rhode Island and, Seattle and Maryland against birthright citizenship. So you see, you've got 5 major programs of Donald Trump, which embodied his 20 or so executive orders, all one by one being rejected by federal courts, the right federal courts, the ones in New England, the ones in the Pacific Northwest. That's where we live. We live in the colonies, if you will, as MAGA lives in Texas, Alabama. We're back to the Civil War. MAGA lives in the courts that were part of the Confederacy, and we live in the courts that were generally part of the Union, at least the colonies. What does it all mean? It means that trust the process. It means that the lawyers representing the public interest groups, the attorneys generals, know what judges, they know what courtrooms, they know what arguments to make, and the Department of Justice and Trump are being caught flat-footed. And they are losing. I joked internally with Midas Touch, I'm tired of winning. Too soon? Okay, I'm not tired of winning. But this is the way we bring Donald Trump to justice, and we teach him the rule of law, case by case. Temporary restraining order converted into preliminary injunction, win the appeals, most of which will never go to the United States Supreme Court. And the few that do, we're on the right side of the arguments, because the Department of Justice, their arguments are not supported by case law. There is no case law. It's just out of the fevered imaginations and stew of Donald Trump's mind and those who are his enablers. There's no law, there's no facts, no proper record, and a ridiculously stretched interpretation of constitutional principles and law. I mean, that's what Judge Coffiner said when he went through the arguments. He said, basically, I don't even understand your arguments on birthright citizenship. It's in the plain language. When he starts off in his order, laying out where we're at, and the valid causes of action here, he says the plaintiffs, is on page 6, the plaintiffs are likely to succeed on their claim that the order violates the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment. Indeed, the court need only look to its text. Just look at the language. The citizenship clause is clear. Quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States of the state wherein they reside. In other words, the court continued, any individual who is born in the territorial United States or properly naturalized according to federal procedure is a citizen of this country. That's it, period. End of story. The judge went on to say, when you're interpreting the Constitution, courts are guided by the principle that the Constitution was written to be understood by the voters. Its words and phrases were used in their normal and ordinary as distinguished from technical meaning. And the argument that the Trump lawyers are making is just stretching words out beyond any recognition or meaning. They try to say, well, the subject to the jurisdiction means that the United States has to consent to people being born here. Consent to people. Do you understand how people are born? I don't think you get birthing if you think the government, what do you think? Somebody I just had a baby born in our life. We have a new daughter from 7 months ago. What do you think? Somebody from the government, from the Trump administration or Biden administration was standing over our shoulder with a nope, you're not approved. Don't come out yet. It's just silliness. And the emperor has no clothes, and Donald Trump's Department of Justice has no clothes and no credibility anymore with the court. When you've blown your credibility in the first 15 days of your administration, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Strap in for the rest of your arguments. We've been saying from the very beginning, just as the judge said in her Maryland decision yesterday, same preliminary injunction nationwide. You go back to an 1898 case that established this principle that if you are born on U.S. soil, regardless of where your parents are from, that's it. As the judge here said, Donald Trump is obsessed with where the parents were born. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter their documented or undocumented status. It just matters that the child's foot ends up on U.S. soil, so to speak. That's it. Ever since the Wong Kim Ark case, when they tried to bar a 22-year-old Chinese American from coming back into the country because they said his parents still had an allegiance to the Emperor of China. The kid was born in San Francisco. Took 10 years to have them decide that, by the way, that he was a U.S. citizen. I don't know where I have to go figure out Wong Kim Ark, whether they kept him in China all that time or he was able to stay on some sort of asylum in the United States. I'm not sure. But anyway, he set the precedent. That is the precedent. We've had the 14th Amendment since 1868. But the Donald Trump's group, the Department of Justice, it's like teaching a 3-year-old the Constitution. Oh, this is interesting. What do these words mean? Oh, my God. I can't take it anymore. But I can take the winning. I can take the winning in the courts. Trust the process. I'm Michael Popok. We'll see you throughout the day on regular updates. I think by the time this week is over, they're going to be 10